Chaol Draven had not slept a full night in 5 years. As the alpha king of the northern packs, he ruled over thousands of wolves, who looked to him for strength, for order, for certainty. He gave them all of that. What he could not give himself was peace. Every night, when the great hall fell silent and the fires burned low, he sat alone with a single question that never stopped clawing at his chest. Where was Alira? She had been his fated mate, the woman the bond had chosen for him before he ever laid eyes on her. He remembered the night they met, how the pull between them had been so strong it felt like the ground itself had shifted. He remembered her laugh, quiet and surprised, as if she hadn't expected to be happy. He remembered the night she disappeared. It had happened during the coup. His half-brother Doran, driven by jealousy and hunger for the throne, had gathered a faction of discontented wolves and struck in the dead of night. Fires had lit the sky. Warriors had fallen on both sides. In the chaos, Alira vanished. Chaol had searched the burning halls, the forests, the riverbanks, screaming her name until his voice gave out. He never found her. He found only silence. Most of the pack believed she had died that night, her body lost to the flames or the river. They told him, gently at first and then more firmly as the years passed, that he needed to grieve her and move forward. He needed an heir. He needed a Luna to stand beside him. He needed to let go. Chaol refused every single time. He refused because of the bond. A true mating bond, once formed, does not vanish when a mate dies. It changes. It goes cold, hollow, final. Chaol's bond had never gone cold. It remained there, faint but alive, like an ember buried under ash, refusing to be extinguished no matter how much time passed. As long as he could feel that ember, he knew, deep in the marrow of his bones, that Alira was alive somewhere in the world. So he searched. He sent trackers into every territory, every neutral zone, every human town at the edges of Wolflands. He offered rewards for information. He interrogated captured rebels from Doran's old faction, hoping one of them might know what happened to her that night. Years passed. Leads turned to dust. His council grew tired of watching their king waste his strength chasing a ghost. "Your Majesty," his beta, Tormund, said to him one evening, not unkindly, "it has been 5 years. The pack needs stability. They need to see you settled. I am not asking you to forget her. I am only asking you to consider that perhaps she is truly gone, and that living in her shadow does no one any good, least of all you." Chaol did not answer. He only touched his chest, where the ember still burned, and said nothing more. It was a young tracker named Fen, who finally brought him something real. Fen had been sent to the borderlands, the wild stretch of forest and hill country that belonged to no pack, where humans and wolves sometimes lived side by side in uneasy peace. He returned 3 weeks later with dirt on his boots and urgency in his eyes. "There is a woman," Fen said, kneeling before the throne, "living alone at the edge of the borderland forest, near the old mill town. She keeps to herself. The townsfolk say she arrived 5 years ago with a baby, and nothing else. She never speaks of where she came from. She has pale gold hair, gray eyes, and a scar along her left wrist, exactly like the mark you described. Your Majesty, I believe it is her." Chaol's hands trembled on the arms of his throne. "You are certain?" "I could not get close enough to confirm it beyond doubt, but the description matches, and there is something else." Fen hesitated. "She is not alone. She has 3 children now. The 2 older ones are not her own by blood, from what the townsfolk say. She took them in a few years after she arrived, when their parents died in an accident on the road. But the youngest, a boy, is hers, born not long after she came to the borderlands." The ember in Chaol's chest flared into something close to fire. A son. He might have a son. He did not wait for morning. He rode through the night with only Fen and 2 guards, cutting through forest paths that had grown wild and tangled over years of disuse, driven by a hope so sharp it nearly hurt to hold on to. He told himself not to expect too much. He told himself it could be a mistake, a stranger who merely resembled her. But the ember in his chest grew warmer with every mile, and by the time the sky began to lighten with the gray promise of dawn, he knew. The cottage sat at the edge of the forest, small and plain, with a garden of herbs growing along one wall, and smoke rising thin and pale from the chimney. Kale dismounted before his horse had even fully stopped. He walked toward the door on legs that did not feel entirely his own. The door opened before he reached it. Elira stood in the doorway, wrapped in a woolen shawl against the morning chill, her pale gold hair loose around her shoulders. She was thinner than he remembered, her face marked by years he had not been there to see, but her eyes were the same, gray as rain clouds, and they widened with a shock so raw it mirrored his own. "Kale," she whispered. He could not speak. He simply stood there, 5 years of grief and hope and fury, and love crashing over him all at once, and for a long moment neither of them moved. Behind her, 3 small faces appeared in the doorway, peering out with curiosity and caution. 2 girls, perhaps 7 and 8 years old, and a boy who looked to be no older than 4, with dark hair that was unmistakably, achingly familiar, because it was the exact shade of Kale's own. "Is that him?" the boy asked, tugging on Elira's sleeve. "Is that my father?" The question landed like a blow. Kale's chest tightened until he could barely breathe. "Elira," he finally managed, his voice rough. "I searched for you every day. I never stopped. I thought, everyone told me you were gone, but I never believed it. I couldn't, because I could still feel you. I could still feel the bond. And I know," Elira said quietly. "I could feel you too. Then why?" The question broke out of him before he could stop it. Not angry, only desperate. "Why did you never come back? Why did you let me believe I might be searching for a ghost?" Elira's eyes filled with tears, but she did not look away. "Because I was afraid, Kale. Doran's people were hunting anyone connected to you. They knew about the bond. They knew that if I was still carrying your child, that child would be a threat to Doran's claim on the throne. Coup or no coup. I ran that night not because I wanted to leave you, but because I was already carrying our son, and I could not protect him inside the palace walls while the fighting continued, and no one knew who could be trusted." Kale's jaw tightened as the pieces settled into place. "You thought I couldn't protect you. I thought no one could, not with traitors still hiding among your own guards. I fled to the borderlands because it was far enough that Doran's people would not think to search here, and human enough that wolf politics rarely reach this deep. I gave birth to our son here, alone, and I told myself that once things were safe, I would find a way to send word." Her voice cracked. "But then I heard, through travelers passing through, that Doran had been defeated, but that many believed I had died in the fire. I did not know who among your court could still be trusted. I did not know if reaching out would put our son in danger again, so I stayed. And the longer I stayed silent, the harder it became to imagine coming back at all." "And the other 2? Kale asked, glancing toward the girls, who watched him with wide, careful eyes. Elira's expression softened. "Their parents died in a wagon accident on the road 2 years ago. There was no one else to take them in. I could not turn them away." Kale looked at the 3 children standing behind her, cautious and unsure, clearly unused to strangers, and something in him settled even as something else ached. 5 years. 5 years he had spent grieving a woman who was alive, raising his son alone, and building a family out of loss and kindness, in a small cottage far from everything she once knew. "I am not angry that you protected our son," Kale said slowly. "I could never be angry at you for that. But Elira, I have spent 5 years believing I lost you. I have refused every attempt to move forward, because some part of me always knew you were still out there. If I had known where to look sooner, if you had trusted me to protect you." "I know," she said again, softer this time. "I have asked myself every day if I made the right choice. I still do not know the answer. All I know is that I could not risk our son's life on a guess." Kale stepped closer, close enough now that he could see the exhaustion carved into her face, the wariness she still carried like armor. "Come home with me. All of you. Let me finally protect you the way I should have been able to from the beginning." Elira hesitated, glancing back at the children. "Kale, they are afraid of what a royal court might mean for them. My son has never known anything but this quiet life. The girls have already lost one family. I will not force any of them into danger again." "Then I will not force anything," Kale said. "I will stay here, if that is what it takes. I will root out anyone still loyal to Doran's memory before I ever ask any of you to set foot near the palace. I have already lost 5 years." I am not willing to lose a single day more out of impatience." For the first time, something in Alira's shoulders loosened. She studied him for a long moment, as though searching his face for the man she remembered, and slowly, she found him. "You mean that?" she said. It was not quite a question. "I have never meant anything more." True to his word, Kale did not press her to return immediately. He sent his guards back to the palace with strict orders to quietly investigate any remaining pockets of loyalty to Doran's old faction, while he remained in the borderlands. He rented a room above the mill, close enough to see Alira and the children each day, but far enough not to overwhelm them. Slowly, carefully, he began to rebuild what had been broken. He learned his son's name was Ivan, a name Alira had chosen because it meant born of fire, a quiet nod to the night he came into the world amid so much danger. He learned the girls were named Mira and Sela, both shy at first, but curious once they realized the tall stranger with his father's eyes did not intend to take their new mother away from them. It took weeks, not days. Ivan was the first to warm to him, drawn by a father's instinct, even before he understood what the word truly meant. Mira and Sela took longer, testing him with questions and watching how he treated Alira, until they slowly understood that he was not a threat, but a promise of safety. 3 months later, word came from the palace that the last of Doran's hidden sympathizers had been found and dealt with through proper pack law. The threat that had driven Alira into hiding was finally gone. Only then did Kale ask her again, this time not as a demand but as a choice freely offered. "Will you come home now? Not because you have to, because I want to build the rest of our lives together, wherever that begins." Alira looked at her children, at the cottage that had sheltered them through years of uncertainty, and then at Kale, who had waited without pressing, who had proven with months of patience what words alone could not. "Yes," she said, "we will come home." The pack welcomed them at the palace gates with a celebration that lasted long into the night, though Alira insisted on a quiet ceremony rather than a grand one, and Kale, understanding her need for gentleness after so much upheaval, agreed without hesitation. He formally claimed her as his Luna before the full council, the mating bond between them settling into something whole and unbroken for the first time in 5 years. He adopted Mira and Sela as his own, giving them not only his name but his full protection, and he presented Ivan to the pack as his son and heir, the boy who had been born in secret and now stood openly as part of the royal line. Years later, those who remembered the coup and the long, painful search that followed would say that the Alpha King's greatest strength was never his crown or his power, but his refusal to give up on the bond he shared with Alira, even when the whole world told him she was gone. And Alira, watching her children grow safe and unafraid in a home finally free of fear, would say that the greatest gift Kale ever gave her was not the throne beside him, but the patience to let her come home in her own time, on her own terms, at last.